We're live, and we got a big show tonight because it's the end of season 7. We're gonna review 6 episodes, and then we're gonna give you a little bit of a season wrap up, our thoughts on the season as a whole. We got our skip and watches from these batch of episodes, and then our top 8. So buckle in; it's gonna be a nice long podcast. What's up, Peter, sir?
Not much.
You're up to season 10 already, right?
I am, yes. I will probably be done everything. I've already done the second movie, so I will probably be done the series in less than 2 weeks, including the not reboot, but the extra sequel seasons, as you will.
Oh yes. I can't wait to get to rewatch season 10 and 11 because I watched it live on TV from Brazil, so I got the crappy kind of laggy version of it as it was actually on Fox. So I want to watch it again on a clear stream. And man, I keep bugging Pete guys to read the season 10 comics. Read it; it's so damn good. It's better than season 10 as far as the mythology goes. Because I did like some of the standalones from season 10 and 11, but the mythology was crap. But season 10 comic book series is really good, and the mythology is out there. It's crazy. But anyway, we got to finish up season 7. We got to finish up season 7, and we're going to begin with All Things, an episode written and directed by our own Gillian Anderson, who apparently didn't know much about writing or directing for TV, but God bless the
Hmm.
folks at the X Files who helped her uh, get it all down. They trimmed down the script a little bit, from what I hear. Uh, the episode didn't have like a final act or had one act too many, and blah blah blah. But she got it down. It was viewed by 12.18 million people. She's actually the first woman, I believe, to direct an episode of The X Files. And it premiered on April 9th, 2000, has a 7.2 rating on IMDb. While Mulder is away in England, Scully is led by coincidences, chance, fate, and possibly a higher power to a married man with whom she had an affair during medical school, and a look at the life she didn't choose, for forcing her to make choices about her future. So I'll let Mulder go with this one.
I'm Mulder.
Sorry. Peter can go with this one.
Yeah,
Got
okay.
consent
I'm going to
from Mulder.
start by saying I love Gillian Anderson as an actress, but writing and directing is clearly not her thing. I would actually go so far as to say this could possibly be the single worst episode in the history of the series.
Oh my God.
Um,
Pete, get real
yeah,
close to the mic because you're very low.
yeah,
You're really low.
all right. I think it's my voice more than the mic, but because I've been talking all day. But yeah, it is basically about. Well, the backstory of this is that Gillian Anderson wanted to do a show that explored Buddhism, which she is a big believer in. So right there, I mean, we've done the Catholic stuff, we've done all types of other religions. We haven't done any Buddhist stuff, largely because it just doesn't really lend itself to super spooky, supernatural stuff,
Hmm.
which this isn't really at all. So yeah, Mulder is in England. I'm not really sure. I know why Mulder's in England. I'm not sure why David Duchovny was not in this. Maybe she just wrote him out of the episode, basically. Um, so yeah, he's in England investigating crop circles, and she goes. She's at a hospital for some reason, and in an unrelated twist of events, she finds out that her former medical school professor is there being treated for a heart condition, and she reconnects with him, and it becomes clear that she had an affair with him while they were in medical school. ooh, scary stuff. So it goes on to sort of connect to Mulder and what he's working on in England. And he asked her to run down some leads for him, because these crop circles are like in a heart chakra shape. So she's supposed to go meet a contact, and the contact is supposed to give her more insight onto this. And she has like a near death experience on the way where this woman gets in the way of her car and she has to put the brakes on. And then she realizes if this woman hadn't walked in the way of her car, she would have been killed by this truck that drove right through where she would have been driving. And then she meets with this woman whose name, by the way, is Azar, which I have to wonder if that was intentional because Azar in Portuguese is the word for bad luck, and it's a really
Hmm.
strange last name. But she gets this whole lecture about Buddhism and collective unconscious, that basically, like, on some level, everyone shares their unconscious with each other. Everything happens for a reason. And all of this ties into Scully wondering if she made the right choice in breaking off her affair with this professor and going into the FBI. And she has a lot of these like super weird Zen moments that aren't really scary. And it all basically comes down to her professor recovers after receiving alternative medicine from this Buddhist uh, expert of Mulder's. And you know how I feel about that shit. So that right there is just like, ugh. And he says he wants to resume the relationship, but she decides that she made the right choice and everything happens for a reason. And about the only thing it has is that this episode mysteriously ends with Mulder and Scully in bed, not naked, but the implication is like this is where we see that okay, at some point between that kiss on New Year's Eve in the Millennium episode and
Yes.
this, they've been doing the business. They don't actually say it. It's a very like platonic in bed thing. They're clothed. Mulder falls asleep on her, but it's clear that they've reached a level of intimacy that's way beyond being partners. But as
Yes.
far as the rest of it goes, the episode's a giant bore. It's only vaguely supernatural. It's more spiritual than supernatural. And its message of collective unconsciousness and everything happens for a reason is kind of bullshit. I'm not a big person on spirituality. So, except for the last minute, giant waste of time. Only thing you can get out of this is Gillian Anderson can't write, she can't direct, and she and Mulder are doing the nasty.
Yeah, and I'm gonna counter that by my last note on this episode. 4-star contender for best of the season. So apparently I really liked it. And I think I liked it for all the reasons you hated it. Because I am into spirituality and Buddhism specifically. And actually, one of the notes I have, I said, weird episode so far with the Scully time lapses while Mulder is out chasing crop circles. But then, ooh, this just got really interesting as Scully goes into a Zen temple. So I like Eastern mysticism a lot. And like Pete said, it's something that the X Files doesn't touch on because it's not exactly the scariest. Uh, can't really get into scary mode with anything Buddhists are doing, unless being
Yeah.
vegetarian is kind of scary. But aside
Yeah.
from that, not much to go on. But I dug it for the fact that we get a little bit of, like how sometimes we say, oh, this is a nice just grunt work episode, just an FBI doing FBI business. There isn't anything that supernatural going on. And so I like it when the episodes have these moments, and usually it's just moments of just Mulder and Scully, like the main characters just being in their house with their family. You know, usually it doesn't work when it goes the full episode, like when Scully was at her family's house for Christmas or whatever. Okay, uh, that can get kind of boring. But I liked just figuring out how Scully's brain ticks, especially her, because the show is focused on Mulder's brain ticking, and we already know how that ticks. And considering everything that she's been through, again, the driving force of season seven, which I'm sure the writers and producers knew the company was leaving, is hey, we need to have somebody on this show that slightly believes, is slightly more on the belief side. Maybe Scully doesn't throw herself into the belief as much as Mulder does. Clearly, you see that in season eight. But she's got an open mind. I think that was interesting from season eight. She's always telling Doggett, just keep an open mind. Like I'm not saying it's this, but just keep an open mind. So an episode like this kind of solidifies it, and solidifies it where it makes sense. Where it makes sense for Scully, like it doesn't make sense for Mulder in Closer or not Closer, whatever that episode, Closure, where all of a sudden he believes in starlight, you know. But
Right.
Scully's always had a spiritual, more religious side to her, so she's already more open to the possibility of that, paranormal or whatever you want to call it. Um, so just this thread of how she arrives there was kind of interesting for me, as a character study of just Scully the woman and not Scully the FBI agent. um, I thought that the whole, she had an affair thing, it was a bit confusing. I was reading here in the notes that apparently there was more to this story that was going to be explained, it was the fact that the man's wife committed suicide. Because I was seriously confused. Like, who was that girl with him? I mean, it wasn't old enough to be
It was
his
his daughter.
girlfriend, but it
It
was
was
his
his
daughter.
daughter.
Yeah. And why was she so angry at Scully? Like, you kind of had to fill in the blanks, and I guess they just had to cut stuff like that out. It says here that it's explained further in like some DVD extra, but the the backstory regarding Scully, Dr. Watterson, why his daughter hates Scully was originally much more involved and complicated, culminating in the suicide of Watterson's wife after Scully left medical school. The intended story, which had to be cut for time, is detailed in a commentary track by Gillian Anderson on the Season 7 DVD extras. Um, so had they at least put a little bit of that in, I think that would have made a little bit more sense, because the daughter just hates Scully, and you're like, okay, I guess something happened. I just figured the wife left him, and the daughter resented that, but then she did turn around in the end. But that wasn't what I thought was interesting. What I thought was interesting was Scully going down this spiritual path and meeting this lady who is the stereotypical 90s new agey bitch. And I used to hang out with these women, and Pete, I think it's half of it is a crock of shit too, so but but it still doesn't mean that I don't think it's interesting, so that's where I'm like, I listen to podcasts about Bigfoot. Do I? Well, maybe I do believe Bigfoot could be out there, but probably not. But I think it's just an interesting topic, the fact that there could be a Bigfoot out there and the conversations you can have surrounding it. So when she gets into that whole new agey thing, yeah, okay, I don't have any crystals in my house to help me. I don't believe in astrology and any of that stuff. But I think it's an interesting topic nonetheless, and there could be interesting conversations and stories built around that. So when she meets this lady, and she thinks it's bullshit too, but then the lady gives her whole spiel, like you need to be open and blah blah blah, and more coincidence happens. And this I do, kind of sometimes look at my life and say, oh shit, there are some things that do seem very serendipitous. Of course, it could just be random chance. Even when we had Kimmy on our podcast, it's like, I have to come to Brazil. I don't know anybody in Brazil. Oh my God, who happens to be in Brazil who had zero chance of ever being in Brazil had it not been for all these pieces falling into place 10 years before when she married my brother's best friend. It's like, oh God, it worked out perfectly. serendipitous, could be just chance, but it does make me at least stop and go, oh, that's interesting, like how that all fell into place so perfectly. The people you meet, the things that you see that could affect you down the line. So she's telling Scully, just be open to stuff. Maybe you are where you are because you're meant to be there. And that's the whole internal struggle that Scully's going through. It's like, I could have been with this man. I could have had this whole other life. It's something that the show has spoken on before in earlier seasons. Like, I threw away a career in medical school and being like probably one of the top teachers or whatever at Quantico or wherever, to be stuck on a mini island with Mulder, chasing the Loch Ness monster of Oregon or whatever. So
Yeah.
it's something it's cool that this episode addressed it head on, and I think gave Scully peace of mind enough to say, yes, I 100% know that I'm doing the right thing. And there was some lesbian kissing, which I think I'm surprised you did not mention, because that was kind of hot. And I kind of thought it was a double entendre where the girl said, you may be open to more things than you think. They had, after the lesbian kiss. I would have liked to see that episode. I would like to see that episode. And then, Scully does go down to Chinatown, which I think is pretty hot. She's got that hot outfit on. And just Gillian Anderson is so fucking sexy. Oh my God. She's so good looking. To just watching her walk through Chinatown, chasing this lady with the cap, which I wish they would explain a little bit more who that was. I thought that was a bit of a cop out. But then she, as Pete said, she goes into the Zen temple, has this moment of whatever the fuck, which I love the camera work and the effects and how she sees inside the guy's body, the doctor, her ex lover who's dying, and she decides, yeah, I'm gonna just go for it. Why not? Bring a Buddhist monk over to the hospital and try to do some wacky Eastern healing, which goes back to that other episode that you weren't a big fan of, Thief, which I kind of liked. But at the end, where she asked, hey, maybe it did work. Maybe he could have saved his daughter doing the chant. So that's what I felt this episode. It made sense because it's picking up on all these threads that the X-Files has been pushing for Scully's character since, season 2, season 3, but even stronger in season 5 when she sees the ghost in the bowling alley, and this thing with that she says in Thief, and the Stephen King episode where she takes that chance and throws the doll in the microwave, which is totally illogical, but she just said, hey, this is how I stop this killing that's going on in front of me. So I dug it. I dug it a lot, for the development of Scully's character. Is it an X-File? Of course not. It's 100% not an X-File. I mean, maybe you could say it's an X-File just for like the spiritual healing shit, because that's not very scientific. But it's not traditional X-Files. But I really like it. I probably will watch it again just to see, if I still have the same strong feelings for it. I mean, it could be just a result of season 7 not being that great and this episode just being different and pushing different narratives out there that made me enjoy it as much. But apparently, according to my notes, I really like this shit. And there was that little switch and bait, because if you watch the teaser, it really does look like they just fucked. But then it's like, okay, she's just kind of lying in bed with him. Although I have a question, Pete, and I guess we shouldn't jump ahead too much, but I just watched an episode of season 8 where Scully asks Mulder to artificially inseminate her, so she can try to have a baby. So if they fucked, does she need to have him?
That was in a flashback, though.
It was a flashback, but it didn't look like it was a
So
flashback to that long ago.
yeah, well, I think it could have been because she didn't conceive, right? So
Hmm.
she conceives not long after this. So I think it's before they were doing the business.
Yeah, because that's the big question people have, and I'm gonna ask that in the X Files group again. Is when did Mulder and Scully fuck? A lot of folks think it's as far back as that episode where they pretended to be a married couple.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't know. Definitely sometime around season 6 is the consensus.
No, it's definitely got to be in season 7 because there's that meta joke in Millennium where they kiss for the first time, and Mulder
Mm,
jokes the world didn't end, and that was like kind of a double joke about the
yes,
Millennium, the
yes.
world didn't end, but also like they never had them kiss for real because the X Files world would end.
Ah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so that makes sense. So that's season 7, Millennium, right? We just
Yeah,
watched that a couple weeks ago. All right, so okay, the mystery goes on. When did these two fuck? We'll figure it out. But anyway, that's my feelings on it. I dug it. I thought it was a little different, but in a good way. But I understand your feelings on it because it's just like this is just not an X File episode. Uh,
yeah. Reminded me of Count Floyd. You ever watch SCTV?
no, I know of it, but no.
Yeah, they used to have this segment where Joe Flaherty played a character called Count Floyd, and he hosted like horror movies, but they were all like totally not scary. And the joke was him making fun of, "Ooh, isn't that scary, boys and girls?" And then he would eventually have to lose his shit because they were just showing like the worst dramas. That's what this reminded me of. Ooh, isn't that scary, boys and girls? No, not really.
I got you. No, I feel you. Now the next episode. Oh my god. Well, Brand X.
Yeah.
This was something else. Okay, so Brand X is an episode that originally aired on April 16th, 2000, and to 10.8 million viewers. So unfortunately, sadly, our viewership numbers are going down in season 7, but understandably so. Written by uh, Greg Walker and Stephen Maeda, and directed by Kim Manners, superstar. Synopsis is an insider holds the secret to tobacco industry's latest deadly development. And what is the deadly development? Is that morally, TV's and the X Files' favorite cigarette brand creates a form of super tobacco, which in turn is inhabited by a form of super tobacco beetle, which survive the cigarette processing, and those eggs are contained inside the smoke, and these become killer cigarettes. Okay, so people die because of the smoke. And speaking of smoke, what were they smoking when they came up with this idea? Um, but there's a guy named Daryl Weaver, interesting name. He's the only surviving participant of this. Um, so there's a doctor, the doctor who's kind of doing all this stuff, all this dirty dealing. He and Daryl Weaver have an arrangement for an unlimited cigarette supply in exchange of keeping quiet about the testing. But Scobie dies, so Weaver goes to the next guy, and he wants to keep his deal going. Get more of these brand X cigarettes out there, and the victims succumb to the eggs and the toxic smoke, and they're covered with these tobacco beetles.
Yeah, not covered with them. They fucking
Come out
infest
of
their
them,
lungs and then they
yeah,
burst out of them. They're like little
and
teeny
even
micro xenomorphs.
oh, it's kind of, I mean, that part of the episode was kind of
Yeah,
cool. Otherwise, I was like, what am I watching? But and even Mulder gets a little
he
infected by
does.
it, right? So, what do you call? So this guy, Dr. Voss, he was not trying to help until he finds out about Mulder's condition, and then he tells Skinner, you know, of what's going on. And then Skinner goes to Weaver's apartment after getting his name for Dr. Voss and finds a man tied to a chair with a gag in his mouth. So when Skinner removes the gauze around the man's mouth, the man chokes and the beetles begin to crawl from his mouth. And Mulder is in grave danger due to the hatching of the beetle eggs in his lung. And then Scully attempts to find a way to save him because he's too weak for thoracic surgery. So Weaver attempts to browbeat Skinner, threatening to light one of the toxic cigarettes, but as Weaver tries to leave the building, Skinner shoots Weaver through the shoulder and the pane of glass behind him, leaving him injured and covered in glass. He drops the cigarette to the floor, and Skinner dramatically snuffs it out with his shoe. So this is Skinner kind of saving the day here. And then Scully realizes that nicotine is what might save Mulder's life. She is correct. And Weaver's nicotine tolerance didn't allow the tobacco beetles to develop in his lungs. So, Pete, you are safe. And me, I'm trying to quit. I might not be safe from the killer cigarettes, but you got enough nicotine in you and you might be good. So, it's nice that we get some Skinner action. Okay. Um, and it starts out it's not a bad FBI case. It starts out kind of has a nice good old FBI feel to it. Um, but I do like that the Morley cigarettes are killing everyone for real. Connection to cancer. But I didn't really get this episode didn't really grab my attention that much. I
No.
thought the premise was it wasn't a horrible premise. There have been worse premises on the X Files, but there's not a lot to go on with this. It just
No.
came off as a "Don't smoke, kids" advertisement. I gave it a 2.5. It's totally forgettable episode. So that's how I feel about Brand X.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, the concept of this was apparently it was inspired by The Insider, which I remember very little about it, including who was in it. I think it was
Oh, The
Russell Crowe.
Insider.
Yeah,
That's a
it was
great little
about
movie, man. I saw that in the
yeah
theater.
yeah it
Yeah.
was about whistleblowers in the
I think it was
tobacco industry.
Robert. What was that guy that kind of beat his wife out? Crow, the guy from the
Russell
Gladiator.
Crowe, yeah, yeah.
Yes, he's in Al Pacino.
Oh right, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
so it
forgot
was
about that
about a
movie. That's a
60
great one.
minutes expose on whistleblowers in
Mm-hmm.
the tobacco industry. But it has very little of this. Like the tobacco industry, like they're the good guys in this. I mean, they're the innocent victims of this poor guy who's like infesting everyone with beetles. I mean, okay, the idea is that they're the bad guys because they were doing experiments with super tobacco that killed everybody. But they didn't put the cigarettes on the market. Um, I think though that this guy Weaver, he's the only one that has them. They're giving him all that's where his lifetime supply of cigarettes is
Cigarettes.
coming from.
Lifetime
Yeah,
cigarettes. That's so silly.
yeah. But I mean, these tobacco industry guys, like at the beginning, the first guy who dies, Sobe, he's being protected because he's actually going to testify against big
Mm-hmm.
tobacco. So when he dies, of course, you think, okay, big tobacco, evil, they're behind this, or something monstrous they did is behind it. But then when we get to know his successor, he's not a bad guy. He's got a family. He's like he's protecting his own ass, but he's not like your typical corporate blood sucking evil monster.
Yeah.
The bad guy is Weaver, and he's the bad
Yeah.
guy because he's going around deliberately infecting people with tobacco beetles for no real reason. Actually, I mean, he lived through the experiment. What does he have to be angry about? So yeah, basically he's the bastard, and the tobacco company is or if not the good guys, they're at least sympathetic. They created this situation, but it wasn't entirely intentional. The other aspect of this is the concept of killer cigarettes. Well, cigarettes are killer to begin with, so that whole idea is pretty flawed. It's like we made cigarettes dangerous. I mean, okay, it's a little more dangerous than in this than they are in real life, but I thought that idea was pretty weak. Good thing about it is the bugs were really gross. I mean, when this shit gets rocking, it looks nasty. So some good effects, some good kills, good ending too. Actually, when Scully shoots up Mulder with the nicotine to save his life. Afterwards, he actually has a slight nicotine addiction to the point where he goes out and buys a pack of Morleys. And Scully talks him out of it, and
Yes,
he
don't
throws them
smoke.
away, but he's looking at them there in the garbage can. So that was kind of funny, but it was also kind of a heavy handed attempt to say, like, look, kids, don't smoke. It's addictive as well as being dangerous. So, yeah, pretty weak episode. Had some good things, but the premise itself was deeply, deeply flawed in more ways than one.
I got you. Well, we go from not memorable to a very memorable episode. Hollywood
Oh,
8000.
yeah.
I'm watching this one. Um,
hmm
and
David
it's an
Duchovny mentioned this in the foreword of his last book, actually.
oh really? That's a fun
Yeah.
episode. April 30th, 2000. It premiered to 12.88 million viewers. Oh shit! It was written by Duchovny and directed by him. I did not notice that when I was
Yeah.
watching. So, an X File becomes the plot of a Hollywood movie, but Mulder and Scully find their case and themselves distorted on the big screen. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
Yeah. So this has one of the most memorable opening intros of any X Files, and it features Mulder and Scully battling the cigarette smoking pontiff, who appears to be the smoking man, but he's also like dressed like a Catholic bishop or something. And they're fighting over something called was it the Lazarus Pit, the Lazarus Stone, the Lazarus Bowl, a
The
bowl
Lazarus
that's
Bowl.
supposed
Yep.
to
Yeah,
yeah
that you
be
could
able to
hear
raise the dead.
Christ or something, right? Like the Christ voice was recorded in there, like a
Yes,
little vinyl record.
yes, and it's supposed to be able to bring the dead back to life, and it does. Zombies start rising from the ground. Except the weird thing about this is Mulder and Scully are played by Gary Shanley and Taya Leone. Um, and we get a cut and we see that they are filming a movie about an X File. So we go back in time and get exactly how this happened. Turned out Skinner has a friend from college who now works in Hollywood. He's looking to do a movie about the FBI doing something supernatural. And Skinner's just like, I want to do this. You know, he goes Hollywood. Skinner totally goes Hollywood. He's like, oh, cool, pick us. So he basically forces Mulder and Scully to hang out with this guy while they follow him around on an X File. And the X File has to do with this Lazarus Bowl, which is a bowl that allegedly contains the voice of Christ and has the power to bring back the dead. And they do encounter it, and there are some cool little effects. Like the X File in this is, it's not the best. If it was just this story, it would have been kind of lame. The real story is about the movie and the difference between what you see on the screen and what you see in reality. But they do have this cool little story of them doing their Indiana Jones and Hollywood thing, um, and trying to track down this artifact. So there is a whole story here. I don't want to get into too much, but it basically involves artifact forgery. There is a priest who is a bad guy, and he does kill somebody. But the real appeal of this episode is just the whole way this movie gets made. The casting is brilliant. They asked Mulder who he wants him to play him in the movie, and he's like Richard Gere, and they're like, "Yeah, that's not going to happen. We were thinking more Gary Shandling, Richard Gere. That's going to be Skinner," and he's like so insulted. And of course, the
Yes.
meta joke was that Taya Leone is actually Duchovny's real life girlfriend, or was at the time. Um, what else do we get here? Oh yeah, Leone has a crush on Mulder. That was funny. Then we get the premiere. The premiere is really good. Basically, like all, well, not all, but like a lot of Hollywood adaptations, it winds up bearing very little resemblance to the original case that they worked on. Of course, they're mortified by the way that they're portrayed. They're portrayed as romantic leads until the climax, where they wind up in a coffin together to escape the zombies. I think Scully's got this line like, "Is that a cell phone in your pocket, or you just happen to
Hmm.
see me?" And they kiss, and then we find out that Skinner was the real star of the movie all along, because Scully rejects Mulder and says, "I can't. I'm in love with A.D. Skinner." And it has this wonderful bit where they walk out of the theater, and Mulder's just, you know, he's kind of disappointed, just like he was in X Cops, that they didn't get it right. Like they had an opportunity to tell the truth, and they just took this, you know, bare bones aspect of what we did and fictionalized the rest and put it up there on the screen, and that's what you're going to believe. So I think, besides the fact that it was a great meta episode in terms of making fun of the X Files and having a lot of comedy, it did have some pretty good commentary about how Hollywood distorts real life events and how
Yes.
people took it. And the underlying X File was pretty good too. This idea of the fact that the church will try and cover up anything that disproves what they believe. And of course, in this case, that's what the church does, except it turns out what they were trying to cover up was actually real. So, and some good effects in this too, with the dancing skeleton and shit. So, all things being equal, not a lot of fault with this one. It works on a lot of levels.
Oh, this is one of the top episodes of the series
Yeah,
for me. I was looking forward to it. Um, Remember when it first came on, watching it back in the day.
yeah.
Yeah, and Gary Shanley's great. He's a guy that kind of disappeared a little bit. Or did he pass away? I think he's still alive, right?
I think so. Yeah,
Yeah, he's just kind of. Let me see, Gary Shanley. I think he's still around. Yeah. No, he passed away. I thought he had. March
yeah.
24th, 2016. Yeah, he died. But I was a fan of the Gary Shanley show whenever I could watch it because it was on HBO and I was poor. So I would have to watch it whenever I was at somebody's house that had HBO, kind of like with The Sopranos. But cool little show. And that was a meta show too. So it's kind of cool that he has his own meta show, and then he was playing himself in a meta episode of the. So it's kind of like all over the
Yeah,
place. Um, I love some of the lines here when Scully describes what's her name? What's her name? Taylor Leone.
Taya Leone.
Taylor Leone. She says she's Jodie Foster's foster child on a Payless budget. No,
Yeah,
or is that how the producers describing it? I forgot here. No warrants. Oh, when he's and then the producer that's following them around, and he's like, "You guys are crazy. You have no warrants, no permission, no research, like studio execs with guns." Uh, and then the guy. Okay, so here the guy is saying this to Scully. Yeah, she's like Jodie Foster's foster child on a pay less budget. That's how you describe her. And then when he says to Mulder, "You're crazy for believing what you believe," and then he tells Scully, "You're crazy for not believing what he believes."
yeah,
I guess there's Mulder's porn tapes on pause. Make a vibrating sound. I don't know what that means. I love the conversation with Shanley when he's trying to get into the character, and he asks
yeah.
Mulder if he dresses to the left or to the right. And Mulder's like, "What?" And he's like, "Oh, okay, I guess to the left, or whatever side." Um, and as Pete mentioned, great special effects, man. Actually, that's been the saving grace of season 7 is the effects department. I mean, I guess they just had some extra money, some really cool stuff. Even back to that episode, All Things, there was this crazy shot where it's like it goes from the hair of the doctor in the hospital and like it morphs into Scully's hair, and they did this whole. I mean, they were just going off with their special effects budget. So saving grace for this. Skinner has a great one-liner. If I'm
Mm,
carrying Marilyn Monroe's purse, do you assume that I slept with JFK?
yeah,
Uh, and
yeah,
then Mulder reciting Plan 9 from Outer Space, which I just watched again, like a couple, maybe last weekend or so. And oh, I love Plan 9. I love Ed Wood. Um, and he's seen it 42 times. A broken clock is right 730 times a year. I mean, there's so many good lines in this. And
yeah,
oh, and then when the one actor gets upset because he's vegan or vegetarian, and the zombies are made out
yeah.
of turkey. The zo- Man, and of course, the best part of this episode is what I got here in the GIF when they're
That hot
in
tub
the.
scene, yeah.
Yes, great scene at the end when they're in the hotels, in their respective hotels, in the bathtubs, and then they have their
Yeah,
three-way
because they get
conversations.
flown out to LA for the premiere and they get put up in this posh hotel and they're all
Yes,
enjoying the hot tub. But Mulder and Scully are pretending that they're not in the hot tub and they're kind of
yes,
hating it. Skinner fucking full out admits it. He's like, I'm in the hot tub. Skinner is like this almost the star of this episode, even though he's not in it that much. Just the way he's like so out of character. He's loving the Hollywood shit.
of course, and that's what's cool about this too is that we get to see Skinner a little bit out of character and just having fun, and Mitch Pileggi just enjoying this role, you know. And there's a little bit of Chris Carter, so we get a lot of cool cameos in this episode. So definitely one of the best X Files episodes in the series for me. So it's a really good one. And then
Yeah.
we get to, we're wrapping this up, guys. Fight Club with everybody's favorite comedian, Kathy Griffith versus the Mormons. Okay, so we have here Fight Club, which premiered on, not to be confused with the movie of the same name, which came out around the same time. May 7th, 2000 to 11.7 million viewers. Written by Chris Carter, directed by Paul Shapiro. Has a 6.2 rating on IMDb. The agents cross paths with a pair of doppelgangers whose close proximity leaves a trail of destruction. Um, oh, I guess it's on me. Well,
Hmm.
I don't hate this episode, but I can see why people can hate it, and mainly because of Kathy Griffith, because she can be annoying as fuck. But I think they kind of toned her down a little bit for here. I did like the beginning where the Mormons are knocking on the door, and then they start fighting each other and everything. But excuse me, what's happening here? They're in Kansas, and yeah, it starts out with the two missionaries visiting these two women, and the whole crux of this, guys, is that they're twins, and then if they're too close together, it creates some cosmic event where everybody just starts fighting, which is something the X Files has done before with that much better episode back in season 3 or 4 with the high school girls
Yeah.
that are friends, and then when they get together, stuff just kind of goes out of whack. So it's kind of the same concept, except that here, again, X Files is banking on its comedy gold and just going full out silly. And so when Kathy Griffith, when her characters come together, it makes people get really upset or things start shaking, earthquake, and everything. And what happens is that one of the sisters is trying to get away from the other one. I mean, she keeps moving from state to state to state, getting different jobs.
Yeah.
But her sister, I guess, unwittingly just happens to go to the same place. It's not like she's trying to screw her life over. It's just they always happen to do much of the same things. So of course Mulder and Scully go out there to investigate. there's a whole backstory with this wrestler, I think called Zupanic. Is that his name?
Yes, yes, played by former heavyweight contender Tex Cobb.
Mm-hmm. And he's in love with the one, but I don't know, he wasn't aware
He
of the
doesn't
other
know that
one.
there's two.
He didn't
He's
know.
he's yeah, he's with them both, but he's not aware that they're two separate women.
Yeah, yeah. So at some point, they kind of start figuring stuff out. After Mulder gets sucked into a sewer when he's between Betty and Lulu. But Betty tells Mulder that Lulu's causing all the problems and forcing her to leave. But Lulu tells Scully the same thing. So when the women pass each other and the sword grate blows, Mulder gets sucked down the storm drain. So Scully finds that the girl shared the same father who's in prison. So this man, who's called Bob Damphouse, is insane. So Zupanik thinks he lost his money, okay, because there's this whole deal going on where you have to pay to play. So he's got to give money to the promoter in order to wrestle that night. But he thinks he's lost the money. But then the girl decides she's gonna print money in the copier, which is real smart, in order to give him this money to pay to wrestle. So Mulder finds his way out of the storm drain that he was sucked out of earlier. So at this prison, Scully meets this guy that looks exactly like the wrestler, Zupanik. So while Betty brings the money to Zapanik's fight, Lulu and Betty meet at the fight, and everyone in the audience breaks into a fight. The other Bert shows up, and everyone stops fighting. The two Zapanics see each other, and fight breaks out again. Mulder and Scully are shown bruised and beaten later. I don't remember what the resolution is, or if there is one to this episode. And like I said, it's not as horrible as people say, because in the X Files group, people really hate this episode. But it's not great. It's kind of a rehash of better episodes, especially the one with the two best friends. Um, and I do like that Scully is having. She looks like she's having the most fun out of this whole thing, and she's kind of really taking charge of the case. I'll be nice and give it like 3 stars, but it's like, yeah, could have been better. Like X Files has done comedy a million times better. I think the problem with this one, Pete, is that it just goes too campy. Like it doesn't. It's
Yeah,
not tethered to anything. There's not.
yeah, it
A,
doesn't make a lot of sense.
yeah, there's not like a slight bit of seriousness to it. It's just like we're just going full camp. Because even X Cops, I mean, yes, that was
Yeah,
full camp, but you still had this seriousness, air quotes, of Mulder, this could ruin your career. And Mulder, we're in the FBI. We can't be on this show doing this stupid shit. Like, so there's still that level of thread that, anchors us back to, okay, we're still in the serious world of the X Files and we can be a little campy. This one was just like, whatever. It's just out there.
yeah. To be honest, who's this written by? It was written by Chris Carter.
It was Chris
So
Carter. Yeah, it was a fighter
yeah,
episode.
I'm guessing Chris Carter was probably just a fight fan because they have this like concept for a story about twins who just kind of have like a nuclear reaction with each other, and then somehow they worked in this whole wrestling angle to it,
Yeah,
and
I
and I
appreciated that.
guess yeah, I did too. But the thing is, the two were like so kind of unreal. They kind of tried to make them related,
Yes.
but they didn't really gel. But what they did do, this episode had like quite a few cameos by fight personalities. The
Uh-huh.
boyfriend was played by Tex Cobb, who was a heavyweight title challenger actually in the 80s. And he's been in a lot of movies as well. I guess people might remember him best as the bounty hunter in Raising Arizona. But yeah, he did
He was
he
the
did a lot
bounty
of
hunter.
film.
What?
He was the bounty hunter in Raising Arizona.
Okay, I remember that.
Yeah, but yeah, he's been in a lot of stuff. Plays tough guy roles, obviously, because he's ugly and his nose has been broken like 20 times. It also had Rob Van Dam, who I guess was
Yay!
actually a somebody at this time because this was released May 2000. So yeah, he was This was just at the end of ECW, so he hadn't made it to WWE yet, but he was like a top dog in ECW, and
Mm-hmm.
ECW was pretty big at this time. So he was in there as Tex Cobb's opponent, and the bartender was played by Judo Gene LaBelle, who is a judo legend. Used to promote for the NWA in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
He's trained a lot of MMA fighters, including Ronda Rousey. And he's also done a lot of stunt work. And allegedly, he once choked out Steven Seagal and made him shit his pants. I say allegedly because there's a lot of conflicting stories. Seagal says it's untrue. LaBelle refuses to comment. But the dude's a legitimate badass. He's like the legend of judo. So you had some interesting cameos in there, including the fake Mulder and Scully. There's a scene at the beginning where
Mm-hmm.
two FBI agents who look just like Mulder and Scully go to interview one of the sisters, and they turn on each other and just have this vicious fight and beat the crap out of each other. And apparently, the fake Mulder was Duchovny's stunt double, and the fake Scully
Mm-hmm.
was Mitch Pileggi's wife.
Yeah, yeah. They met
And that
on
was
set.
actually, yeah, that was actually one of the better parts of this episode.
I
Mulder and
agree
Scully
with you.
investigating them and finding out, wow, these two have worked together for 7 years. They've never had any problems. And they kind of give each other knowing looks like, oh, this could be us one day.
I agree with you. Like I thought that was the most interesting aspect at the beginning, and I wish they would have explored that further, like an episode on doppelgangers. They that was the X file. Like that would have been the cool episode. But Mulder and Scully, not what otherwise could have just been twins. They're not doppelgangers; they're twins. So
Yeah.
I like that. And then later on, I guess in season 10, they kind of reintroduced, the Einstein and whoever the fuck, as kind of versions of Mulder and Scully. But I dug those two. I wish they would have explored that angle a little bit further. But, I guess there's some folks out there who don't mind this episode. Like I said, it's not horrible. It's just like, okay, next episode. That's
Yeah.
all it is. Um, So, guys, we're almost getting here to the end. We got two more to go. So, let's go right to it. And how's your French, Pete? Because I don't know how to pronounce this shit. Je serai.
Je suis, I believe.
Je serai. Je serai is an episode that premiered on March 14th, 2000 to 12.79 million viewers, written by Vince Gilligan, directed by the namesake. And an ancient female genie causes trouble for a string of unthinking masters, including Agent Mulder. And Jesuhe is French for I wish. Okay, so there you go.
Ah, okay.
It's on you,
All
brother.
right. Yes, yes. So this is one of my favorite episodes of the season by far. One of my favorite episodes of the series, actually, at least in terms of Vince Gilligan comedy episodes. Because man, this is brilliant. So the the basic premise is they're on the trail of a genie. They're investigating the case of a guy who got his mouth inexplicably sewn shut. We see in the opening sequence he's running a storage facility, and he's berating a lazy employee for not cleaning out a storage locker on time. And the guy tells him to shut up. And the next thing we know, the guy's got no mouth. So Mulder and Scully follow this tip to the employee's house where he has a large boat conspicuously in front of his house, and they don't really have an explanation for how the boat got there, but they don't really have anything to hold them on either. Um, as it turns out, he found a genie in the storage locker, and this guy is such an idiot. I believe actually it is Will Sasso from the old Mad TV show who plays the guy who found the genie. But this guy is such an idiot, and his brother is not much better. So we see him with this genie who is kind of hot, and his first wish was to make his boss shut up. So that was a waste. For his second wish, he wished for a boat, but he lives in St. Louis, so he's kind of inland. Doesn't have any place to use his boat. And she asks him, like, think hard about your next wish. The joke about this is his brother is in a wheelchair, and she's kind of trying to nod him towards, like, isn't there something you would like, leaning towards his brother? And he wishes to be invisible instead. So she groans and she grants his wish. And he takes off all his clothes and goes running around being invisible and gets hit by a truck and dies. The long and short of it is that his brother winds up with the genie, and his brother doesn't do any better with it either. His
That's a
brother
great
also
scene.
doesn't. Sorry?
I was saying that's a great scene with the brother and him trying to figure out what
Yeah.
he's gonna wish for. Like, motherfucker's in a wheelchair.
Yeah, but then when his brother gets control of the genie, she's like, "Isn't there something you would like to wish for?" and points at
Yes.
the wheelchair, and he's like, "I could wish for a gold-plated wheelchair." It just doesn't get it. But what he does wish for is for his brother to come back to life, which puts Mulder and Scully on the genie's track because they're doing the autopsy on the invisible guy. But he comes back to life. But just like the monkey's paw, he's like a zombie.
Hmm.
So he wishes for his brother to talk, and his brother's words are ah ah. So
Yes.
finally, he has to wish for his brother to be dead again. The third act, Mulder gets the genie, and he realizes that he has to wish for something selfless because the genie takes everything literally. She's being very ironic. So he thinks he's going to outsmart her. So he wishes for peace on Earth, which the genie grants by making everyone on Earth disappear except for them. And she's like, yeah, yeah, you thought you were being clever. You think, like, I can do what, like, mankind hasn't been able to do for, since the dawn of time. No, you want peace on Earth? This is it. So he wishes for everyone back. The funny thing, though, this is a nice touch of the episode. His first thought is not that he killed the entire population of Earth. His first thought is he thinks, oh my God, I killed Scully. That's his first thought. He wishes
Hmm.
everyone back because he wants Scully back. So he wishes everyone back, but they come back when he's in Skinner's office in the middle of a meeting. And that's a really awkward scene as well because he's talking to the genie. I think Skinner's used to Mulder doing crazy shit, so he just kind of shrugs it off. But everyone else is like, "Yeah, what the fuck?" Finally, Mulder gets the message, just like Aladdin did, that in order to be truly selfless, you've got to set the genie free. So he wishes for her freedom. Lesson learned. But holy cow, there is a lot in this episode, and so much of it is really funny, including a lot of obvious references to I Dream of Genie, the old 60s TV series with Barbara Eden and Larry Hagman.
Hmm. Um, and you skipped one of my favorite parts, was Scully doing an autopsy on an invisible man.
Yeah,
And she got so pumped up because this is Scully seeing shit and believing, and she's so hyped to call everybody in, call all these medical doctors. You got to see this. You got to see this. But then
yeah,
the body's gone because the brother
yeah,
wished the body back to life. So when they show up, and then she's like, "What here, guys? Because it's invisible. It's got to be here." And then it's not there.
yeah,
But Pete, you have managed to do something twice in our podcast, which is make me enjoy your version of, your retelling of the episode more than the episode. Like, I like this, but for me, like, my final thought on it that I wrote down was cute. but blah. Like, okay, it was cute, but it didn't really touch me as much as it did you. But it does have some nice bits in it, and I think what took me out of it was just how stupid these brothers were, and it's not to say that there weren't
Yeah.
people that
A
stupid.
gold plated wheelchair.
Yeah, like okay, I guess there might be people this stupid walking around Earth right now, but it was just like too much where I couldn't buy into it, and um, but in the whole thing, in the end, lesson learned. It was kind of predictable and stuff, but it was cute. It was cute. It just wasn't like my favorite. I gave it like a 3-star rating. But this and the Goldberg variation are two episodes, guys, that I watched it. I liked them. I thought they were cute, but I think I like Pete's retelling more than the actual episodes. So that's how I feel about that. And then we are going to hit. Oh, I forgot to change here. The season finale and the end of an era because Mulder gets taken up by a UFO and it's Requiem. And it really does feel like the end because
It
there's
was,
so many callbacks, including to the very very first episode, the pilot. Because they take their asses all the way back to, or is it Oregon or something?
yeah,
Um,
well, at the time they filmed it, they didn't know if they were going to be picked up for another season. So they shot it as if it were a series finale.
okay, yeah, it definitely has series finale vibes to it, and that would have been a fucked up series finale with just Mulder gone.
Well,
Uh,
no, because they were thinking of maybe
of a
making it
movie.
a movie
Yeah,
franchise.
exactly. It would have been a good lead into a cool movie. Uh, but anyway, this one premiered on May 21st, 2000 to 15.0 million viewers. So the viewers came back to watch this happen. Written by Chris Carter, directed by Kim Manners, has an 8.0 rating on IMDb. And ignoring warnings to reduce their budget. Oh, I like this opening sequence with the IRS. I forgot about that with the IRS agent. Mulder and Scully, well, not IRS, sorry, the just the budgeting department, whatever, at the FBI. Mulder and Scully research reports of alien abductions in Belfort, Oregon, decided their first joint X Files investigation. Yeah, so they head out over there, and it's cool, because they run into Miles, which was the guy who was Billy Miles, right? That's his name.
Yeah,
Um, um, Very similar to Billy Myers, I think, which is one of the most famous abduction cases ever. Um, and we catch up with him, find out he's joined law enforcement. He's got himself together, but people are disappearing. Okay, people are still disappearing in these woods. So Mulder and Scully do go up there to try to figure out what is going on. Um, and but there's things going on in Oregon and in Washington at the same time in this episode. So the stuff going on in Oregon is that there's these two UFO enthusiasts that show up at the previous night's activities, because they saw something in the sky. Um, and the dad, Detective Miles, he's totally against it. He's like, stay the fuck away. He's like, man, there's nothing going on back here. But the youngsters go into the woods anyway, and they're curious about what's happening. And the excuse me. And back in Washington, Mulder's phone rings, and he finds out that it's Billy Miles calling him and saying, "Yo, there's some stuff going on. You guys got to come back over here." Now, who shows up in this episode? But Marita and Krychek, which is interesting. We haven't seen
yes.
Marita in a while. She apparently got cured from the alien virus. Krychek's still around. They arrive at the cancer man's door at the Watergate Apartments, and they're let in. And CSM is in a wheelchair, man. He speaks
Hmm.
squeezily, smokes through a hole in his throat, and greets them and shows immediate concern for Krychek, who's not buying in it. And CSM defends himself by stating that the reason he did what he did, which is put Krychek in jail. That's how he disappeared last time. Is that Krychek was trying to sell something that belonged to him. And anyway, so he changes the conversation, say that they need to concentrate on the matter at hand, an alien craft that crashed in Oregon. They got to go down there and see what is going on. Meanwhile, back in Oregon, Gary and Richie search for the craft using a flashlight and a Geiger counter. As Gary wanders off, he walks into a force field and is shaking at high speeds. And I love this effect of the shaking. It freaks me out way back from the early episodes. Gets suspended in midair, and boom, he's gone. So Mulder and Scully arrive, and they have their conversation with Billy. Get back to the team is back together. Um, and the dad shows up. He recognizes the alien and pretty much tells him, "Look, stay away. There's no UFO activity here." But what is he hiding? It's the X Files. Um, but Billy, shows them to the site where things happen. Mulder leaves the car, and he and Scully are using it and immediately notices it's the cross that he left on the side of the road. So what a cool callback to that cross way back from the pilot, where it's where the clock, missing time. So
Hmm.
Mulder marks it with an X to say this is the site of some possible UFO activity, which is a very cool callback. And they see that there's this black burnt residue in the on the highway. So he investigates what it is, um, and Scully asks Billy about the missing deputy. Because there's a deputy that was missing. I'm sorry, at the beginning of the episode, the deputy does go missing, and they're trying to figure out where he is. So they go and discover that he's married. Go to his house, get some information. Okay. Now, Mulder and Scully, they speak to Jose's wife and are stunned when it turns out to be none other than Teresa Neyman. Remember who that is, Pete?
Yes, that was the girl who rejected Billy way
Mm-hmm.
back in episode 1. I guess he stayed rejected.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So she now believes, in these abductions. Her husband, she believes, was abducted or is an ongoing thing. She leaves, gets some medical files, leaving her baby on Scully's lap. Foreshadowing. Mulder watches as Scully plays with the young child. In Oregon, Mulder's looking through these files in his room, uh, and Scully arrives feeling cold and dizzy. Okay. He asks if she wants to call a doctor. She declines. So, something's going on with Scully. We're going to find out in season 8 what that something is.
No,
Uh,
we find out at the end of this episode.
we find out she's pregnant at the end of this. You're right. You're right. You're right. Um, so what's going on with Scully though? At this point, we're like, what's going on? But who's there? Krychek arrives. Okay, and he's outside the motel where Mulder and Scully are staying. He calls cigarette smoking man, saying, "Look, nobody found the UFO." Uh, and he believes it probably wasn't even in that area. But Cancer Man says, "Look, keep finding it. It's hidden in plain sight." It's like Star Trek 4. Uh, so, and he's shocked to hear that Mulder and Scully are there, but why wouldn't they be there? Okay, Cancer Man's got to respect Mulder's game by now. And he's like, "Look, Krychek, you got these agents, they're looking for a missing deputy, and he's the key to finding the ship." And Krychek hangs up. And then what happens? Hosey is awake in the middle of the night. Somebody's knocking on our door. It's her husband, or at least we think he is, right? Because I don't think it really is him. It's more of the shape shifting aliens. They're back, okay? She attacks him, repeatedly stabbing his torso, but the green ooze comes out, causing her eyes to swell up. She tries to reach her child, who's crying upstairs, but is stopped by the intruder who drags her away. So then Mother and Scully go to her house, and it's a crime scene now, yeah? Because she is gone. Both agents recognize the scorched substance as kind of an alien blood. They're back, but then Scully gets nauseous, and but she shakes it off. But back in the Watergate Hotel, Marita asks CSM why he went to the trouble of bringing Krychek there, if only to toy with him. But CSM is like, no, we're gonna find this alien ship, which makes me wonder, Pete. If they find the alien ship, what the fuck are they gonna do with it? But okay, they want to find the
Yeah,
ship. Okay, and the cigarette smoking man is like, okay, the ship's probably rebuilding itself before it leaves again, and he is cryptic as usual and saying, the usual Cancer Man stuff. It's the answer to every conceivable question ever. That there's no gods beside alien intelligence, which is kind of
yeah,
the Chris Carter mythos from those episodes I absolutely hated. The was that the seventh extinction, whatever it is, sixth extinction. That the gods were aliens, and um, and uh, when Morita, because apparently the whole mythology before the syndicate got smoked out, literally smoked out, is that they were coming to invade, but Cancer Man's like they're not coming, they're returning. Um, so Mulder notices Richie is nervous. One of the boys that those two boys that went into the woods and one of them went missing. So he approaches him. He wants to find out what's going on. Um, he's very emotional, and then he tells him, "Look, my friend Gary disappeared in the woods." And then near the force's location, where Richard was separated from his friend, he now leads Mulder and Scully to the woodland, explaining exactly what happened on the night when Gary disappeared. This is when Scully, in classic X Files mode, gets lost in the woods. She kind of goes in her own direction, and doesn't she get uh kind of shaken, whatever
yep.
it happened.
She gets
Yep,
lifted off her feet, actually.
which is insane, which was really good. I love stuff like that. But the alien notices the arrival of Mulder and Scully, who enter the property to find neither the alien nor Billy and Miles. They when they get out of there, the alien does show up. Alien bounty hunter is back, but he doesn't want to kill Mulder and Scully. Um, so that there's nothing there. There's no case. There's nothing they can do. So they go back to FBI. Skinner, you know, approaches Mulder in his office, um, and he figures, look, I'm going to be punished for this trip to Oregon. We spent money we shouldn't have spent. But Skinner shows sympathy. Tells Mulder, look, just a case, and that, despite what they may have achieved, the FBI just don't like. Okay, so Skinner signals both Krychek and Morita into the office. Okay, after a brief hesitation. So Mulder wasn't expecting this. He immediately goes to attack Krychek, but is held back by Skinner. And Krychek shows him his understanding of Mulder's hostility, and tells him, "Look, CSM is dying, and he wants to find this UFO. That's in Oregon. You got to go there and find this UFO before CSM does. I mean, we're supposed to be working for him, but we've turned on him because he's an asshole, basically." Um, So I guess Krychek might still have Skinner by the balls, which I guess is why he can, Skinner can get in touch with him and set up this meeting. So Scully, what happened to Scully here? Is she still feeling sick? I guess
I
she.
believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess she was feeling sick because she was totally out of this whole combo here. So they go to the lone gunman. So again, more finale feels. Um, oh, okay. I remember, and the wiki here is helping me remember, guys. It's that what happens is that Mulder tells Scully to stay behind because, as a former abductee, she cannot take the risk of going out to Oregon to find this alien and possibly getting abducted again. Okay, Scully will not let him go alone, but he won't be going alone. Skinner's going there. So to close out, because there's a whole lot more here that I don't feel like reading through, is the closing scene. They're out in the woods. They got all this cool gizmo tech from the Lone Gunman. They're trying to find this spaceship. And Mulder, in classic X Files fashion, walks off alone, ahead of Skinner. And Skinner, in classic X Files fashion, does not notice because he's busy toying with the gizmos. And Mulder gets the shaky camera treatment and disappears. But the cool part about
Yep.
it is that Skinner does look up and he sees the big ass UFO that drives off. Well, not drives off, flies off with Mulder inside. Um,
Mhm.
and then it just kind of ends, just to close it out. Some important stuff happens is that Krychek and Mira go visit the CSN, who's already aware of his plan's failure. Okay. So Morita holds Greta, his little maid, back, and Krychek wheels cigarette smoking man out of the room, and he's like, "I'm gonna send the devil back to hell, dude. Just shoot the motherfucker in the head." Instead, he just pushes him down the stairs, which, as we know, in TV land, is not how you kill people. I mean, apparently, not even missiling them in the face is how you kill people, but that's a whole other story. But definitely, you can't kill Cancer Man by throwing him down a flight of steps because he will be back later. And then, of course, Scully's in a hospital because she had a collapse. She's visited by Skinner, who asks how she's doing, and then she's very emotional. Well, Skinner's emotional because he lost Mulder, and but he can't and won't deny what he saw. But before Skinner leaves, Scully tells him that, although she cannot understand it, and that it's important that it be kept a secret, she is pregnant. All right.
Yes.
Good lord. I needed a little help from the wiki page to remember all that. I just know that I fucking loved this episode. I really, 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 really loved it. I love seeing my green blooded aliens back. I love the beginning scene where Mulder and Scully are being altered hard as fuck. I love seeing Marita and Krychek back because Marita's so cool. I mean, it's a tough act to follow Mr. X, but she did a really good job. I love seeing Billy Miles back. Now Cancer Man, poor guy. I mean, they just ran out of stuff for him to do. And he's just kind of dying off. But cool scenes nonetheless. But it just sucks to see him in such a weak position because it's Cancer Man. He always has it out. Although, can a person talk through a tracheotomy or whatever? When you get the
If
usually
you have a voice box, I think
that's what I'm saying, and you get that weird kind of voice like that. Like he
yeah.
was talking normal, so that's kind of like a fail there, tech fail for X Files. I love the callbacks. X is still there. The foreshadowing with Scully holding the baby. Shapeshifter alien is out for blood. It's good to see him back. In the whole scenes with Scully phasing the fuck out when they enter near the alien spaceship's force field or whatever the hell it is. So yeah, they got all the big guns out for this episode. The lone gunmen are there. Uh, and Skinner seeing the ship, which is a really important development for him.
Yes.
Again, setting up season 8 because Mulder's gone. How are we going to have the X Files without somebody that believes? So it's cool to have Skinner finally see something, and Scully just more open. Let's say, I like how when we talk about season 8, we'll get into Scully's character, but the fact that she just isn't Mulder, she's not gonna just snap into I believe in everything mode, but just more open minded. I thought cigarette smoking man being thrown down the steps is kind of stupid, just because you just don't throw bad guys down the steps in TV shows. they're gonna come back, and they should really check for vitals. It's like, Halloween Kills. It's like, you don't just beat Michael Myers down with a bat and then walk away. You like chop his head off and hang it somewhere. But it's the movies, it's TV. And Skinner crying at the end, man, so fucking heart wrenching. Oh man,
Yeah.
Mitch G, MVP of this season as far as the little bits that he was in, man. The guy always gives 100%. Scully being pregnant, one hell of a cliffhanger. Mulder disappearing, of course, the ultimate cliffhanger. And as Pete said, which I wasn't aware of, this might have been the series finale, and it definitely felt like it, setting up for a movie. And I think that would have been fucking amazing in retrospect, but, too bad it didn't happen. But I give it 4 stars, man. Great send off. And definitely one of the strongest episodes of the season. And on to season 8. It got me pumped to like, hey, I want to watch season 8 and see what the fuck happens after this. So I loved it. I loved me some Requiem.
Yeah, I wasn't crazy about it. I don't want to talk about this too much because we're running pretty late and I got an early rise tomorrow. But yeah, I like the way that it connected to the first episode and really everything that happened in between. Almost too much. It compressed an awful lot in the
Hmm.
60 minutes. But yeah, it had a little bit of everything from the series. I felt that if this was going to be a series finale, it would have been a really shitty one unless there was a movie to follow it up.
Yes.
Because, I mean, without something to follow this up, it's kind of a cop out. So there would have had to have been a movie to make this work. Unfortunately, since it did continue, it's kind of undermined, actually. It turns out to be just kind of an anticlimactic way to get Duchovny off the show without killing him and allowing, a possibility for him to come back. So I thought, we've already had the Scully abducted by aliens. Now we get Duchovny abducted by aliens. Within the mythology of the show, like that's just kind of how you get rid of people, I guess. But
Hmm.
yeah, I I liked it, but I think within the context of the whole original nine seasons, it doesn't work quite as well that way because the series did continue. Um, as a lead into a movie, it would have worked better.
No, I get you. I'm reading a lot of the comments here in the wiki. Most people agree with you. Would have been a great series finale leading into 1 or 2 movies, and they could have just compressed a lot of the pregnancy and the William and the Super Soldier storylines into those 1 or 2 movies. I dug it though. Although I did see here that apparently that scene in the hospital, Mitch Pileggi and Gillian Anderson were approached by Kim Manners and given a printed text before of what the dialogue was going to be. They didn't, nobody really knew that she was going to deliver those lines about being pregnant, so everybody was shocked. Although Gillian said, "I kind of knew it was coming, I just didn't know when." So I didn't know that little tidbit. So, all right, guys, that is season 7, episodes 17 through 22. We're going to run through this real quick and then give you a quick thoughts on the season. Skip or watch, Pete? All things.
Skip, skip, skip.
I happen to really love this episode, so I'm going to say watch. What about Brand X?
That is also a skip.
I would say skip this one too. Hollywood AD.
Watch.
That's a must watch.
Yep.
Classic. And Fight Club.
Skip.
I'm with you on this one. Skip it. And Je Serai.
Watch. Definitely watch.
I'm gonna go with Pete with watch, even though I didn't like it that much, but it's a cute episode. And Requiem.
Watch.
Yeah, I give it a watch, and even if we didn't like it, I imagine it's a watch because it's just such an important part of understanding what the fuck is going on.
Yeah, it's
Um,
necessary.
it's a necessary watch. So anyway, season review. What's your thoughts on this season as a whole, Peter?
I think it's the weakest of the Duchovny Anderson seasons, but it's not without redeeming value. Like, you can feel your enthusiasm gradually starting to drop, especially after the beginning. Like, I liked part two of the sixth extension, but then it just lost me on the third one, and it took a while to come back from that. I would say it has some going over my tops for the season. I only have like one mythology episode, so it kind of really lost its way in terms of the mythology, and pretty much the monster of the week stuff became the best things about it. And even the good monster of the week episodes were actually more humorous and light than they were full on scary like some of the earlier ones were.
I'm with you on that. What's the weird thing about this season is that it's not like it's not bad. It's like not badly written. Like the dialogue's bad and the camera work is bad, and it's actually well done. But it just seems like it's missing a spark. It's that kind of now we're in the French here. The what do you call it? The je ne sais pas. The I don't know. It just
Hmm.
missing that extra little thing that season six had because a lot of season seven parallels season six as far as being a little bit more meta, playing with the comedy a little bit more, the show kind of poking fun at itself. It's what worked in season six, which is I think season
Hmm.
six for me is my favorite of all the seasons we've done so far. But for whatever reason, this little extra spark just isn't there. I don't know how to describe it other than that. So it's a definite watchable season. It's not totally boring. It does lag a little bit, but almost all the seasons have their little lag moments. But what Pete said, they lost the script as far as the mythology as soon as they killed off the syndicate, and so those episodes are not worth anything. The mythology episodes in this seventh season, and there was no real scary monster of the week episodes. That's why I got so pumped with season eight. Like we got scary again. Like season one, season two type scary. Um, so I agree 100% with Pete. I'll give one positive thing is that Mulder didn't phone in anything, or not Mulder,
Nope.
but Duchovny, even considering the fact that he was about to leave the series, and he even wrote what is probably one of the best episodes of the season. So I give him credit for that, and I give credit for expanding the Scully character. I'm not too happy with what they did with her after, and I don't think Jillian is either, or was. But at least this season, I thought her progression from skeptic, pseudo skeptic in the beginning of season seven to pseudo believer by the end is kind of cool. I thought that was a good arc for her. But otherwise, yeah, it's bottom of the pile as far as all the seasons we've done so far. It's my least favorite of the bunch. Um, and now, guys, we're going to give you our top 8 episodes of the season. Where's my little list? That was really hard to do this time around. I guess you can start, Pete. What's your number 8?
My number eight is the one we just finished reviewing, Requiem.
I'm with you. That's my number 8 too. I think it's just a necessary episode.
Yeah.
Um, but it works for me, even beyond just necessary. It kind of moves along. The pacing is pretty cool. It's got like this real uh, uh, vibe of like immediacy to it, which I kind of liked, which the rest of the season mostly lacks. And number 7.
Number seven is Chimera. Probably one of the scarier Monster of the Week episodes, actually.
I was debating putting that in my top eight. I ended up going with an episode that you didn't like, but for the same reasons that I thought it was one of the generally scarier ones, which was Horizon, with our boy that likes those women's hairs and nails and all that jazz.
Right.
I love that. And number six.
Number six, first person shooter.
Oh yeah, you did really dig that one. I thought that was a little too silly for me,
That
but
was
I
a memorable one, actually. That was one I was looking forward to watching when I started doing the rewatch.
yeah, I know you're a fan of it. I was looking forward to it to figure out if I liked it or didn't, and I realized I didn't really like it that much. And then, because it is memorable, that I can't deny. And Ami, I put as number six in one of the few mythology episodes worth
It's a
something
good
in this
choice.
season with William B. Davis writing. So we got a lot of the cast writing here. Uh, and yeah,
Hmm.
I appreciated it more this time around than the first time around. So dug it, dug it, dug it. I think we're to
Okay,
number five.
so my number five would be Millennium. It's a crossover episode.
Great episode. That's coming up for me, but it's not number five. My number five is Sign und Zeit, and one of the few times, and I think even when we reviewed that little chunk of episodes, one of the few times where I think both Pete and I agreed that this episode was a definite watch, but Closure, the second part, was
Yeah,
a so Closure did not make my top eight, but Silent Zeit, man, another one that kind of like Requiem. It's got this sense of immediacy and things are happening and boom, 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 boom. And I just thought it was a really cool episode. So definitely watch it. But then you got to watch Closure at the end, Closure.
yeah,
But I don't think it's that great. No Starlight love for me.
yeah.
Number four, Cuatro.
Number four, X Cops.
Woohoo. That's a great one. Great campy episode. And I got Millennium as my number four. Great crossover episode. I know a lot of folks really complain about it in the groups, but hey, I liked it, so fuck you. Okay, number three,
Number three, the Goldberg variation.
and this is one episode. That's the one that I was debating. I was like, did I really love it as much, or did I just love Peter's recap of it? And I think I put Peter's recap of it as my number one episode of the season, but it's not in my top eight. Instead, I have Hollywood AD as my number three. Must watch, classic X Files, probably one of the best of the series. Really great episode, great meta episode. Number
Yeah.
two,
Number two, Hollywood AD.
yeah, great one. We reviewed it tonight. And my number two, and Pete's gonna get all mad at this, but all things, I really like this one. Like this a lot. I dug the spirituality angle. I dug digging into Scully's psyche in this one, in something very much removed from the usual X Files. And number one,
Number one, I Dream of Genie, Just So Hate.
oh, there
One of
she
my
is.
one of my favorite lighter episodes in the entire series.
Cool. And again, I gave the Genie episode a number two spot on my imaginary Pete's recap of that episode. But unfortunately, it did not make my real top eight. And my number one is X Cops. I love this episode. It's just silly, it's fun, it's out there, and it works. It's one of the few times in the season where them just going really silly does actually manage to work. So what a crazy list we had. Weird season to have a top eight for. So y'all, it is late here in Sao Paulo, Brazil. It's 11:30. We all got to wake up early, but I want to thank everybody who watches. I should have done this at the beginning, but whatever. And subscribe and like and do all the things that you do. We will be back in January. We're going to take a receive break from stuff. Um, and we will get into season 8 and season 9 and 10 and 11 and the movie and all that jazz. So we hope to see you back with us and get some into some Robert Patrick mode for the end for the start of 2022. Hope everybody had a decent year, all things considered. And see you next time, folks. Bye bye. Keep believing.
All right.
Stop
Cheers.
believing.